Hey y'all, we are going to get started tonight with talking about 4 exercises from Pilates mat that I use in every single one of my new client sessions when I'm getting a brand new client. Now, it depends on the client and what their goals are, of course, whether or not I would do the traditional version of these exercises. And if I have access to equipment, then oftentimes I will actually do some of these exercises on the equipment. But we're going to start with looking at a video, and I'm going to break some of the concepts down because I want you to see what I'm looking for. And I'm hopeful that this will be helpful for you guys as you learn and you're building your teaching. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have a Mat Pilates video library that I'm working on for everyone right now. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get that going. Okay, so let's look at my first exercise that I often teach brand new clients is actually the 100. And I know it seems kind of crazy because a lot of people actually have a hard time with this exercise, but I use it a lot of the times because I want to see what their ab curl position looks like. When I'm going to look at from that is a couple of things. Number one, are they aware of neutral spine? Because the start position obviously is neutral spine. What is their connection from their spine to their pelvis? I'm looking at their thoracic mobility, and I'm also testing their ability to connect to their rectus abdominis and their core muscles and their ab muscles. And then if we progress the legs from tabletop to down, I'm also assessing to see what's the connection to the back of their legs in coordination with their core. Can they support the position of the ab curl with the legs extended down and long, right? So I'm going to kind of work through this video and I'm going to push play. There's no sound or anything. So obviously with the Pilates 100, there's several different versions. The traditional version is with the legs extended and the arms and everything flat, but I'm showing a progression that could be taught to a new client as well. So we start with the tabletop legs, and then I'm going to come up into the ab curl. So right away, before I start pumping, I'm just going to pause that. What I'm looking for is this angle from the head, the neck, the shoulders through to the rib cage. I want to see, if possible, that my client's rib cage right here, the tips of the ribs are folding in towards the belly button, right? You should see the shoulders roll forward with the neck and the head, but we want to make sure that the scapula are not lifting up and that the shoulder is internally rotating too much. We want to see that there's this, we call it serape in the studio where I work at, but it's this idea that the scapula is connecting down into the back, but also wrapping forward towards the ribs. And when I'm pulsing these arms up and down, my elbows are extended. I'm pressing through the palm of the hand, reaching through the fingertips. So there's this nice long energy through the arm, and the energy is down, down, down. And this wrapping, I should see this tone through the back of that arm and the scapula while I'm keeping this curl. Now, my legs are going up. I'm progressing from here. So often I will do this with a brand new client to see what they're capable of. So you can see I'm going down just a little bit lower. So as my legs change in position and I lengthen that lever longer, I take the legs away from the center. I want to make sure that my client is still connected here and they're not losing their ab curl. Now, you will see sometimes neck muscles pop like this. When I filmed this video, I was very tight. And so if the client is feeling a lot of pressure in the neck muscles, or this is hard for them and they complain about the neck, then you can check out the module that I have about the ab curl position and teaching that, because I go through a lot of really cool dynamic ways to teach them how to properly activate the neck muscles with the core. But we do want to try to get them in a place where they're feeling more in the abdominals than they are in the neck. They will feel the neck because the neck muscles are obviously working to flex their spine up, right? But a lot of times what will happen, just for food for thought, whenever my client is tight in the thoracic, what you will not see is this curve here as high. So you can see the position where my ear and my shoulders are. If I was really tight, this angle may not be as curved upward. So if we consider, let's say we're talking angles, right? If we consider from my pelvis, and perpendicular to the mat, if we consider that 180 degrees, that line, right? That straight flat line. For me, what I'm looking for is that that person is able to come up above the 180-degree mark and that they're able to actually, oops, they're able to actually curl up and again maintain that ab curl position here without changing the lower body as well, right? So that is kind of what I'm looking for. If again, if they don't have a lot of thoracic mobility or strength in their abs, they're going to have a tough time coming up into this flex position like that. And then I'm going to show this last clip here where I lower the legs down, and you can see there's this tone in the back of the legs and the front of the legs that supports that position of the curl. So the person should actually come deeper into this flexed curl to sustain that position of the legs. If they start to flatten back out to 180 or their lower back begins to arch, that means that one of two things: either they're not open enough in their thoracic spine, or maybe they're not strong enough in the backside of the legs or in the legs, right, to hold those legs up there with that curl position. So it can be numerous things that I'm seeing, but I love using the 100 as a assessment exercise. People really like it too because it is one of those exercises that takes us back to the original origin of Pilates, and we can kind of educate the clients about this idea of stimulating energy right through the nervous system and waking it up, creating that heat. And sometimes I'll joke about it with clients that it's like we don't call contrology for nothing, right? We're working on that control of our abs and our core, but we're also looking for control of our mind, right? This exercise is hard. There's 10 sets of 10 beats. It's 100, right? And so it takes a lot of stamina, endurance, and willpower to even like continue to push ourselves, right? So that's another thing that you can kind of see when you take a client through this exercise. If they are giving up on themselves, it can be because they're not strong and they don't feel like they can do it. Or sometimes you'll see somebody like just even though it's all their form is all over the place, they still may like continue to thrust themselves. So you are looking as well at their willpower and their work ethic in this moment to see like how much internal drive they have and if they can push through. And that's where you can find that boundary a little bit as their trainer, as their coach, as their teacher, right? You're sort of looking to see like where is that boundary where I can push them to, where they feel successful, where they feel good about the work that they're doing. They don't feel depleted or like they aren't strong enough, right? We want to find that buffer zone of like um, positive coaching. So this is kind of there. And then as always, whenever I am teaching this, I teach everybody to come back into the ball at the very end, just so that they really have their legs controlled. And they're able to come out of this exercise with control. So I'm looking at control too, right, within this exercise. Okay, so the next exercise we're going to take a look at is the roll-ups. And again, this is another very traditional exercise. It can be done on the Cadillac, on the Reformer. You can do the roll-ups so many different ways. Now, if they're an athlete, I will do the mat style warm up. But if they are, let's say that they are pretty athletic with their movement, maybe they're not an actual athlete, but let's say they're pretty athletic, they don't have any injuries, and they want a good workout, and I know that they are wanting that push, I may also try the roll up with them just to give them an idea of like what is possible or where we're trying to push to, and we'll break down the form from there, right? So with our roll up, we start sitting up on both sit bones, feet are extended out. So we have that energy through the legs. We're always looking for that full body engagement. And then right away in this moment, I'm already looking at how are they seated? How is their seated posture, right? What is possible for them? In this moment, like right now, I'm not quite all the way stacked, and I'm going to push play in a second, but you can see my iliums are tipped back a little bit behind my sit bones, and my lower back is a little bit curved here. You can also see my shoulders are a little bit protracted forward, as if I have a little bit of flexion happening in my thoracic spine. And my neck is slightly forward. If I look at my ear placement in line with my acromion process and my ribs, and I track down my line of alignment, you can see my neck's a little bit forward. So we can assume maybe that I'm a little tight either in my hip flexors, because that's why my pelvis is dropping back, or maybe I'm tight in my hamstrings, right? We don't really always know what it is, but I can assume that based on my posture, something is not allowing me to sit upright on my sit bones. And usually it's either the front line, right, or the back line. And then from there, again, I'm observing. I may try to get my client to find their sit bones and really sit up tall, but maybe not on the first one. On the first couple, I'm always looking and watching and observing. Then from there, I'm teaching them to rock the pelvis back, scooping the abs in, articulating the spine down one vertebrae at a time. And in this moment, I'm looking to see how clunky was their movement. Did they have that control in their body as they unfolded their spine on the way down? Were there any sticky spots, right? Did they kind of like skip over a vertebrae or two, or was their pelvis able to actually like rock back to initiate the movement, or did they just go flat back hinge and kind of plunk down, right? Then, of course, there's the way up as well, right? So we start with our arms coming forward, the chin tipping toward the chest, our thoracic curls, and then we're going to fulfill that movement with a nice kind of spine stretch forward moment at the end. And this is where I'm also looking to see, okay, what is possible in this position for this client. So for me, you can see actually I've got pretty good range of motion in the hamstrings and the upper back in my shoulders because I'm reaching pretty far past my feet, right? But then if you were to look right here, it looks like my curve could be deeper. And so what I might would do as a teacher in this moment, after they've done a few repetitions, I may come behind the ribs with my pinkies like that, do a little hands-on rib cage kind of scoop to hollow the center and get the iliums and the pelvis to drop down to open that lumbar spine a little bit more. Because you can tell right now that I kind of am tipping forward with my pelvis as opposed to pushing oppositionally back to stretch the spine. So let's watch a couple more. So there's my ilium rocking back. I'm going to scoop and hollow the belly. The ribs arrive. I reach. And then I'm going to come back up, chin to chest, scooping those abs out again and trying to really let the upper body lead the way as I roll down and up. There you go. And you can see that little moment with my shoulders that I found, but we are really looking again here for that little serape moment where the scapula drops down and back, even in here in that full stretch, that I don't lose that scapula connection. And so you can see a lot with our Pilates roll downs. Another area I really love to zoom in on is on the way down for people right about here. You can see my shoulders are a little bit lifted and my chin's a little jammed forward. What I would love to see is like right in this moment, maybe my scaps drop down and connect into the shoulders and the lats. And then this would hollow out more and kind of, it's like you would get that transverse abdominis to really wrap in the belly to pull back to the spine. And that's how they'll get a lot more connection to their core in that moment. Now, if they're doing this with the rollback bar on the Cadillac, you could actually encourage a little bit heavier arms, that sense of heaviness, and that would give you the scapula connection. And then the last thing you could really, really encourage is like this press out and this energy through the legs, especially in this moment, to really create and kind of try to stimulate that full body engagement. So again, for the roll-ups, a lot of times I'm looking again at how is their body now moving as a whole? Is there a connection? Are they able to segmentalize their movement and control their pelvis and their spine? How does all that operate together? Okay, and then I'm going to look at my single leg circles next. So you could do different versions. Again, it depends on the client that you're working with, but hopefully by this point, I wouldn't necessarily do all of these in a row. I may, for most clients that are brand new, I may actually not do the mat version of this. I may do a version with the tower and put their foot in the strap so that I could see a little bit more supported version of this. But in general, the circles are a great exercise that you can take a look at how the hip flexors are coordinating with the pelvis and the core. And we want to see that there's a team operating there. We also want to see that the femur is able to disassociate from the pelvis. So if they have low back pain, if they have hip pain or any kind of issues with that, you'll notice that the person sometimes doesn't have the ability to control the isolation, or again, we call it disassociation, this idea of moving the femur on its own and isolating that aside from the pelvic bowl and the pelvis moving side to side. So let's look at our circles. I have a couple of different versions here on this video. I'm going to show my single leg circles 2. Oops, hang on. Let me minimize this. Okay. Single leg circles 2, because single leg circles 2 is straight legs, more like the traditional form, but on this one, I'm not letting the pelvis move. So this one's more about stability. So before we start, what I look for with the client is obviously we want to have energy out of this standing leg. The arms are actively pressing palms down so that the shoulders and the clavicle are open. We want to avoid their spine changing. So we really are looking for that nice neutral spine, neutral pelvis, whatever's available. So I do want to start looking here like at those iliums and that pubic bone to see, are they in a neutral pelvis position? Do their ribs pop? Are they arching their back? I'm already, on top of that. Are their shoulders rolling? I'm already on top of all this. What about their neck here? Does it have extension happening with their chin tipping up? What can I do to help them discover more optimum start? But then when they get their leg lifted, a lot of times it is a lot of work for people to load those hip flexors like that. So we want to make sure that we coach them quickly. With the leg circles, it's not about how high this leg is. A lot of people think when we ask them to get in position that they need to lift the leg like really high. I tell people go to 90 degrees. And if that bothers the hip flexors, if they start to really cramp and grip and it feels unbearable to hold, then we can lower the angle a little bit less than 90. Basics are I want to get the knee straight and I want to get the front line on. So we have the quads, we have the hip flexors, all that's on. So that is kind of what we're looking for in that position to start. So then from there, what I'm also looking for is that the person is, when they lifted that leg again, that they're still in their neutral pelvis, neutral spine. The movement itself, as we know, we can go both directions. We can go toward the center line and we can go away from the center line. I always start toward the center line first, because that way that I think for most people, that's a little bit easier start position and they can reference the middle. So from here, we start with crossing the leg around down and there's that accent up and there's an exhale there so that I can see the coordination of my core muscles as well as my obliques, right? Because I'm looking to connect to this inside line of the leg to our internal and external obliques. And then I'm getting this cross lateral activity of this left side shoulder, upper rib wrap, right? I'm looking for that cross lateral connection to stabilize. And then I'm going the other way. I'm looking to make sure this leg here is still activating and controlling, right? And then I'll do the other side, same thing, across, down, and big exhale up, inhale, exhale, around, up. And I want this activity here with the belly. You can see I'm really taking those exhales at the time that the leg lifts. So if you can coordinate that with your movement, with their movement, it's really a superpower because they can feel so much more connection to how their leg works with their core. It will likely help them not have the hip flexor gripping that a lot of people experience. One hands-on that you can do, I don't have the ability to show this obviously because we're doing a video, but when the person gets their leg up initially into that start position, you could take your hand and place it, your palm of your hand or your heel of your hand on their heel and ask them to press up into you and imagine they're pushing the ceiling away. What that will do is help them find more connection to their quads to help support their knee being straight and help support their front line. Because again, so many people are tight in their hamstrings and or their hip flexors, but they're not getting the entire team turned on. And that's actually why they feel crampy, grippy, and can't quite hold the leg. It's because their leg is either too high, their knees bending, and they're only getting one muscle group active. So we want to get the whole part active. So if you can, again, lower the leg, place your hand there to get them to feel your heel of the hand that they're pushing up into that to create that connection. Then you could even keep your hand there as you do the circles to get them to feel the rhythm, the flow, and then the connection to their core. So I love those. And then I'm going to show you one more version. This is the single leg circles 3, which has more of the mobility in the pelvis. So this comes from, again, more the traditional Pilates leg circles. So now on this one, I'm going to keep my shoulders stable and pretty much my rib cage as well. I don't really want the ribs twisting. The rotation's coming from the thoracic spine, but the pelvis is moving with the leg and everything, right? And there's this opposition happening. You can't see my other hand, but I'm pressing that right arm down into the floor before I start. So we have that same 90-degree start. I'm going to inhale. I even open my arms wider because we're going to mobilize. So now I'm lifting my pelvis off. I come through the center and I lift that leg and take it even bigger into a bigger range of motion. And I also, in these, I bring in more um, articulation of the femur, right? So you can see me going from parallels into external rotation. So when we reverse it, you can go external rotation, lift the leg high, come down through parallel. And for fun fancy, I also pointed and flexed my foot. So you can even incorporate some of those details to help your client. Now, on these leg circles, I usually do both of them in an assessment. If I'm working with my athletes or really athletic people. If I am doing a session with someone that's not as athletic and maybe has some lower back pain, I may not do these with from the mat. I may do it with the tower so that I can still see all the same items, but they have a little more feedback and support with the spring. Now, with these, the other thing that I'm looking for is that they are not getting any like popping or snapping in their hip. So particularly, I'm gonna show you this other leg here so you can see the closer leg. So most people don't get any popping or snapping when they go toward the center, down around, and they lift the leg from the side from hip extension. They typically will get the hip snapping and popping when they reverse the direction. So normally from right here, in passing from like hip flexion and abduction, when they pass from that place into hip extension and adduction, that's when a lot of people get the snapping sensation in their hip. And what that can be is a muscle that is activating when it shouldn't be activating. So what my normal solution is a little hands-on. So I'll take again that hand, the palm of the hand to the heel of their foot, and I'll guide it out. And then I'll actually grab the bottom of their heel, have them point their toes, and then have them push my hand to continue that half circle into adduction when they bring their legs together. So I would grab right here on the heel, and then I would have them actually point their foot. And then let's see if I can slow that down. So it's kind of a fast circle. So right about, let's see, right about here is when they get the popping. So I would try to coach the back line right here, are the glute med and the glute max and the glute minimum. Everything's activating. I would try to encourage them to feel a wrapping and a tone of the back line of the leg there as they pull the leg back to center and then go from lifting back across. So that would be a quick little fix if you are getting some of that popping with your client. But you can see from this side, like I am really rotating in this position. I'm rotating all the way across there. They should feel a great stretch in the side there whenever they go into internal rotation. So try those out. I feel like for me, this is a really great exercise, again, to see what's happening in the hips. Because one very, very unique thing about Pilates and the movement that we do in the studio is that we're taking the body through all planes, but we're also loading and working our joints, looking for our range of motion, but also how and where and when do the muscles turn on to support our limbs, right? And our body as a whole. It's got to work as a team. And that's really what we're trying to teach our clients, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you one more exercise, which this is a staple. I don't think I ever teach a session, period, without doing bridge of some sort, because I have found over the years that it is a great exercise to actually train your clients to feel their own progress from session to session. So if they're coming, let's say, to group classes and they saw you on Tuesday at 10 and then they come on Friday at 10, if you did bridge on Tuesday and they got a hamstring cramp and then you helped them find a way to get out of that cramp by maybe putting a ball between their knees and having them squeeze the ball and activate their inner thighs, whatever your tool might have been to get them to, find the right tone in that position. On Friday, when you do it again, you can do the same series with that ball. And then maybe the following week, if they're there on the Tuesday, you do it without the ball. And the goal is to see like, wow, you cramped last week. And so that indicated some weakness or some kind of disconnection, right? And then on Friday, you did it great again and you didn't have a cramp. And then the next week we progressed without the ball and you didn't have a cramp and you felt stronger. And they're going to feel that difference. And so we want to teach our clients, that is really a powerful tool to teach them is their body awareness, right? And their ability to connect with their body so that whenever they leave the studio, they can apply those things. And then they experience again the change, right? Which the change is them getting stronger, them not having pain in certain areas or cramps in certain areas, right? They're gonna get stronger. But they may not notice it. Like we talk about this all the time. Sometimes our clients do not notice their progress. So that is where you can be very strategic as a teacher to pick exercises that show them how much stronger they've gotten, right, over time. And bridge is one of my favorites. So let's break it down. I've got two different bridges on here. This first one is with our spinal articulation. So this would be great for people that don't have any back injuries. We're going to look at neutral pelvis as well in a moment. And that one is one, again, if we have anybody that shouldn't be doing the loaded flexion, that's what that's going to be good for. So I start with tucking the tailbone under. I'm going to lift the pelvis up. I'm going to pause the video just to kind of show you what I'd be looking for. So right here, I'm already looking like, where do they set up? Some people will set up with their heels a little too far out away from their knee. So kind of the ideal is if we can get that knee joint right over top of the ankle bone whenever they lift up into bridge. This will appropriately load the back line of the legs, specifically the glutes and the hamstrings. So that's kind of the angle we're looking for. Now, if they get up there and they start cramping, also, you want to really look at this angle because if their feet are too far out this way, it will make it harder for them to activate their glutes because of the angle that their leg is at, right? Because we're asking when they push through the feet to lift their butt, they're pushing against gravity and they're using their glutes to extend the hip. But the hamstrings also support that. But here's the thing, the hamstrings bend the knee, right? So if the knee is a little bit more extended, the hamstring is also extended. The muscle itself is longer, right? Because that angle would be longer. So you're challenging the muscle in a lengthened place, which can make it feel harder, okay? So if you have that person that cramps a lot, check this angle, or if you cramp a lot, check your angle of your knee and your heel and your hip and make sure that you're setting that client up for success to be able to properly load and get the right activation behind the glutes, okay? You can also, from here, what I'd be looking at is I'm looking at my ability to extend the hip. So I can look at the ilium right here, as well as the greater trochanter right about there. So I have a whole module where I walk through alignment and principles of posture and body mechanics and how you can actually dig into spotting this a little bit more. So check that course out. But for this particular moment today, what I want to really see is that this little dip here disappears. So I'm looking for there to be, I'm going to call it a valley, to be no valley between my hip and my quad. So you can see there's just a tiny little dip here. And that means likely one of two things. One, I'm really tight in my front line, my quads and my hip flexors, right? It could also be there could be a correlation between my upper back position. So you'd want to also be looking to see, like for me, with my angle from my shoulder to my rib, that acromion process to my rib to my greater trochanter, where is my diagonal happening? Am I splaying my ribs and arching my lower back, or am I connecting and wrapping them in? So you can see there's a little bit of an arc here for me today, and then there's also this dip. So I'm likely tight, maybe in the lower back, and maybe in my front line, right? We could kind of make that assumption. And then on the way down, I'm also, there's one more thing actually. One more thing I'm looking for here is that my shoulders, if they were rolling forward, I would see my chest cave down and I would see the ribs drop a little bit. And that's when you may get more of that person with the lumbar lordosis or that arch in the lower back if they actually aren't opening their chest and pressing their shoulders back into the floor. So you want to also kind of look at that, what's going on in the shoulders here. If they are rolling forward, you could coach them to press the back of the arm down right through here. Sometimes I'll take my hand and have them press the back of the spine of the scapula down, and that will open the thoracic. and then they can often push their pelvis up higher. Another hands-on I love for this moment to bring awareness to them feeling the right tone is I could go from the front, like standing right about here with my client, and I could put my hands gently on top of their thigh bone, like right where the knee and right in front of the knee. And then I could gently pull their femur and their quad toward me and say, imagine you're sending your knees over your toes that way. And what that often does is, again, it helps them press their pelvis upward, find that hip extension, and find the back line doing that. Then they get a stretch in the front of the body. And that's really what we're looking for, right? We're looking for this nice diagonal line in that. And then on the way down, since it's spinal articulation, I'm going to start from my sternum and I'm going to start to melt and roll my spine down. Sternum, ribs, or sternum, shoulders, ribs, lumbar, and then the pelvis. And then we'll watch a couple movements here. So curling up, you can see I'm a little bit tempted to splay the ribs forward, and then I corrected it here. Another cue you could give if your client was getting that little bit of a cramp is driving their heel down and pushing it down into the mat as they lift the pelvis up, because sometimes people are not pressing through their heel and they won't feel that back line. So here's neutral. So with neutral pelvis, I'm just elevating up with the hips and then lowering straight back down. So now we don't have that spinal articulation and that roll through. It's a little bit more isolated to just the back line of the legs and finding that control at the top and at the bottom. So these two exercises are really great. If you are doing a reformer-based class, I love doing bridge still, but what I'll do is I'll put the feet on the foot bar instead of on the floor. So that way they can actually really activate. We lift the legs, they can activate a little bit more and get the pelvis up a little bit higher. But that is a wonderful exercise to coach your clients and also bring awareness to where they may be locked and tight. And then that way you can make sure that your lesson plan for the day, or if it's a new client, your session plan for that new client is really going to show the client what they need from Pilates. Because at this point, after I've done these exercises, I have a lot of intel, I have a lot of information to then build like what I need to do next with them so that I can either target an area that needs support, whether it's stability, whether it is strength in the glutes and the hamstrings. If it is that they're tight, right? Like right here, if I was tight, I may really, really need to make sure that I show that client a hip flexor stretch so that they can feel the openness. And then maybe at the end of the session, you do another bridge and you see that they actually can go higher because of that new range of motion and muscle loosening, right? So those are four of my favorite exercises to teach our incoming clients. Let me go back here and get out of my screen share. Perfect. There we go. So I hope this is really helpful for you guys. Again, a lot of these exercises I showed you are more on the Pilates side of things with the movement. But if you are another movement teacher, you teach yoga or anything else, you will have your own exercises that are similar. And so I want to encourage you to use those as ways to read your clients and set them up for success and progressions, or set them up for an amazing, what I call teaching moment, right? Where you actually identified an area that may be a weaker spot, whether it's the body awareness again, or whether it is their strength in that area, right? So you can identify those areas to hone in on your session. And then that client really does walk away feeling like that session was tailored for them and they got some hands-on, they learned something new about their body, and you also have a lot more information, right? So that you can give them the best session for their personal goals so they can set and achieve them, right? So have fun with that, and absolutely let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments, and or if there's exercises that you really find valuable for new clients or for assessment purposes. And I will see you guys on the next Teacher Lab call. Hope you have a great week ahead and talk to you soon.